Welcome to another episode of the Heartset Leadership Podcast. Right now in the workforce, what is more valuable as a leader? Is it an MBA or a psychology degree? In today's episode, my guest Matt Perry illustrates how to transform your leadership from transactional to relational. Matt is the founder of The Other Consulting, where he draws from decades of experience in journalism, healthcare, and organizational change to reveal why the new rules of leadership are rooted in human centered relationships, not just strategy and tactics. Discover the difference between transactional and relational leadership in this episode in real time when he puts me on the spot, and why making the shift can transform your leadership everywhere, from healthcare organizations to tech startups. Enjoy this episode. This is the Heartset Leadership Podcast. We're here on the beat of modern leadership to help you crush your goals without crushing your soul or your teams. Hi, Matt. Thank you so much for being here to talk today about heart-centered leadership and what we're doing at Heartset Studio. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Why don't we start with you telling the audience a little bit about your background?
Okay, I will do that. But before we do that, I want to ask you a question. What's the thing these days that you're most grateful for?
Gosh, look how timely. I was actually preparing, I'm in a grad study program right now for organization development, and we always do a call out. And I was about to this afternoon talk to my class about how grateful I am for them in this class and this learning journey. And so it's so funny because it's been on my heart and mind over the last 24 hours, and we did not prepare this. You just came out with that question.
That's right. That was
Yeah.
spontaneous. Well, that sounds awesome that you're grateful for that. I was kind of hoping that you were going to say, well, I get to interview you today, Matt. That's the thing that I'm actually most grateful for.
I'm absolutely grateful to interview
Was
you.
that number two on your list?
The only reason the other one popped into my head is because I've been doing that mental work thinking about that today, about this gratitude note I'm going to give my class later. But yes, absolutely. I am so happy that you're here, and I'm grateful that you asked that question too.
Okay, perfect. All right. So I wanted to tell you something. We just started the interview a moment ago by me asking you that question. From a leadership point of view, in the past 2 minutes, what happened between you and me? What are the things that you experienced during when I asked you that question and then in the repartee between the two of us? What are the leadership principles that were already I was trying to put into place? Instead of talking about all this stuff, I'm really interested in seeing things at work. So when I asked you that question, and then when we had that back and forth, what was going on between the two of us in a heart set kind of world?
Well, you took it from the head to the heart, right? To find out what was top of heart. I won't say top of mind. I've worked with a mentor who has written a book called What's Going Well and worked with some teams around this concept of leading meetings with that question and talking about gratitude for sure, but not contrived. It's more like, hey, we can always think at work, especially what's going wrong and where we need to solve problems. But when we
Mhm.
shift that mindset, and I say heart set, into let's ground ourselves in what's going well and start from there, it can definitely bring it into such a more heart-centered place, right? And emotionally giving versus solving.
That's it. And so the conversation changes the moment we move from the head to the heart. And so we did a few things. Instead of being a transactional thing, like, okay, we're going to have an interview and we've had this agreement to do this interview. I talk, then you talk. So I wanted to move it to a relational experience instead of a transactional one to a relational one.
Love it.
That's one of the number one things about leadership. So much of our life in the world, it's kind of like, have you ever met somebody, like maybe a stranger, and within 30 seconds, they pull out their business card and then they give you their business card. Oh, did I tell you that I sell essential oils on the side? And they give you, and you're like, I just met you. And
Mhm,
you've immediately turned it into transaction. So
mhm.
for leaders to be aware of how much of their communication during the day is transactional rather than relational, that's number one. So we connected. First, we connected, right? Relationally. Two, we talked about kindness. We talked about kindness, like in a very straightforward way. And the third thing or fourth thing, depending on how you're counting, one that I think is wildly undervalued in
Mm.
life is a sense of humor. That's
Mm.
why I intentionally said, wasn't I on your list of gratitude? Because if you're, especially in areas of conflict, when we struggle, it can be in friendship, in a romance, or at work. If you can add humor, humor just comes in and immediately kind of just busts up the blockages. You get somebody to laugh, and suddenly there's a new opening where there wasn't one before. And so, in those 2 minutes, and yes, I did prepare all of this. We related, we talked, we were kind with one another, we connected, and we had a laugh.
Love it.
So we're good. Okay, it was really nice talking to you, Lisa. We just saved ourselves like 40 minutes. This is awesome.
I love where you're going with this, Matt, so much. And I also do want people to know, how did you become this amazing person that can quickly think on your feet like that? Like, where did you have your start in your career and what has led you to this place where you're heart centered now?
Oh, that's such a great question. And actually, you asked a really good question because I was going to start kind of with my healthcare writing. But actually, before that, I've been in entertainment. So I went to film school at NYU, basically a storyteller, either as a filmmaker or as a journalist. Like stories fascinate me,
Mm.
people fascinate me, people's stories fascinate me. I've always studied psychology and also health and alternative health. I'm just like, how do things work?
Mhm.
Right? Do things work? And when I looked at the world, I was like, wow, there's these super serious things over here. There's these super funny things over here. I'd really like to explore all of those. But the thing that I'm most excited about is how things work, how humans work, and also how what's happening down below the surface. And we're going to be talking a lot about that today from a kind of job point of view. For a decade, I wrote about healthcare for the California Health Report, specializing in aging, so storytelling, which is really important. Then I got tired of writing about other people's stories and their health journeys and systems and companies. And I decided I want to be part of this. I want to be an active part. So I studied for and became a somatic coach. The somatic meaning the body, but in a much wider sense, the body, the Greek soma, the body, our thoughts, our friendships, our education, our physical activities, everything in our life goes into our soma. In the West, we call the soma, it's the biomechanical body. The true soma is much bigger than that. And then after I started doing that, literally the first year of the pandemic, and then I've done that since then, but I transitioning right now to a new consulting business called The Other Consulting because I was bored just doing one-on-one work. I wanted to work with systems and organizations, and the other consulting meaning, how do I connect with that person across a computer screen, across
Mhm.
the political aisle, the racial divide, the gender gap, up or down the org chart, your friend who's wearing a red MAGA hat, and your friend over here who's going to the yoga class. I'm just interested in so that's what the other consulting is about. How do we make those deeper connections within organizations and between people?
So you're taking the ecosystem of the individual and you're looking at scaling your work into the ecosystem of how individuals are connecting now, it sounds like.
Well, individuals make up those larger systems. There's individuals that are behind that that whole system. I don't care how much AI you got out there, y'all. It's all going to come back to the people. And so, if we lose track of that, then we are in big, big trouble.
Yeah, 100% agree. I'm seeing the organizations that are successful are the ones that remember that AI is to support the human, not to replace or do instead. Yeah. Okay.
What a concept! That's
I,
this is you're really pushing the envelope there.
it's funny because we hear this from bigwigs in AI that they're saying the same thing, but then how it's playing out in organizations is so different, and people's personal experience is not aligned with what the words are being said. So, yeah,
For sure.
fascinating. Okay, so working in the systems within, we've talked about a little bit too on the healthcare side. Do you want to talk a little bit more about what that looks like for the work that you do in the healthcare field?
Sure, sure, I can talk about that. In fact, it was quite fascinating. I mean, anybody that has had interaction with the healthcare system is just boggled by the bureaucracy, the challenges of finding good health, finding people who listen, actually listen. to them. I spend a lot of time finding my clinicians and my specialists. It's like I don't let somebody just say, "Here's this is the person." No, like, no, 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 no. I'll be choosing my provider. Thank you very much for the suggestion. But the system itself, I mean, I'll give you an example of something in the healthcare world. A friend of mine, Gail, had a cardiac event and she went to rehab at a facility. And I noticed that all the caregivers there, they looked incredibly sad and they looked like they were undervalued and they looked like they just kind of hated their lives. And it's like I could see them come in and here's my friend and she desperately needs help. I mean, she is at their mercy. And so I said, you know what? I got to change this paradigm. I've worked in covering healthcare. I know that people in those positions are underpaid, overworked, especially since the pandemic. And so there's a woman that came in and I looked at her and I said, "Ma'am, I just wanted to thank you for taking care of my friend Gail. And the one thing, one other thing I wanted to tell you. She has a lot of caregivers who come in here, but she said you're her favorite one." And she was kind of perked up a little bit. And then I went to see my friend Gail a couple days later. She said, "Matt, I got to tell you something. Sandra or whatever her name was, she says, ever since that you said that to her, she has just gone overboard to make sure I'm comfortable and cared for." And I said to her, I said, "I know that I kind of made up that story, but the thing was, I did appreciate what she did. That part I absolutely appreciated." Did Gail say that she was her favorite? No, she but what I wanted to tell her was that she was appreciated. And I'll tell you, in today, we have a meaning crisis in this culture, and it filters through everything. People don't feel like they have meaning in their lives. So for me to tell this woman she was so important to caring for my dear friend, that just made the whole difference.
Yeah,
That's one story.
I love that story. It's such a meaningful connection point, and I bet she became her favorite.
I think she This is why you're the interviewer. I didn't even think of that, but that's why. So
Yeah.
I think you nailed it. That's beautiful. I love that.
I feel such a connection to you, Matt, in that when I'm out and about and I see someone within customer service or helping people, and you see such a bright light in certain people, right? Naming it and letting them know and giving them that feedback. I'm not looking for anything in return. Like there's ancillary benefits sometimes, sure. Like your friend had even better care, I bet, because you helped with that meaningful connection. But just being able to say, like, people complain all the time. It's so easy to complain. It's so easy in a restaurant to send something back. Not everyone does that, but that feels easier than saying, "Hey, I see you. I recognize you, human to human. This doesn't have to be just transactional. I want you to know how you're making me feel." Right? Um, there's so much power in that. And yeah,
So
I'm
much
I'm also the type that I won't hold back. I'll let people know in the moment.
It's so huge. There was a book in the '80s written by art critic Robert Hughes called The Culture of Complaint. Guess what culture he was talking about? Is American culture.
Mm,
And so I know that if I have a bad experience and I might write to customer service, I might do that. I always make an extra effort to then reach out at another point, email, "Oh, this person was incredibly helpful to me." It can change everything. And if we just did that more frequently, really showed appreciation for the people who are serving. It doesn't matter if they're being paid for it. They're still doing this service. And if we show them our appreciation, it's just, the rising tide raises all boats, as they say.
absolutely. So, with that said, what are you seeing as far as pressure points and challenges for leaders today in your work and your connections? How are you seeing leaders right now in the workplace?
That they hate their jobs. Let's always start with that. A lot of leaders really feel overwhelmed, and it's just
Mhm.
like there's too much going on. They struggle with so here's the biggest challenge. A lot of leaders have been, maybe at larger companies, they've gone to Wharton. They've gotten their MBA. I spoke with a woman. Anytime I get a chance to talk to anybody about leadership, doesn't matter if it's somebody at the gas station, when if I'm buying something in the convenience store, I will ask them, what makes a good leader? Any opportunity I get. I met this woman, she was a leadership consultant from Minneapolis, of all places. And I asked her, "What are you seeing the trends out there?" And she said, "Blah, blah, blah." And I summarized, I said, "So what you're telling me is that if you're going to be a leader today, you're better off with a psychology degree than an MBA." She said, "Absolutely, 100%."
Mm.
So, but another buddy of mine who I met at my gym of all places, who's a leadership coach, I said, "What's the biggest challenge for leaders?" And you know what he said? This one blew me away. He says, "Leaders can't lead.
Mm.
Leaders are not able to lead these days because most of the time, people don't want the rah-rah thing. Yeah, let's get a bit up, let's do it for the company. That's not of interest to them. And they feel kind of confined, and you've got all the different managers and things like that. These people, most of the people, they know what they're doing. And most of the time, they kind of don't want to listen to what leaders are telling them because the old days of I'm going to save the day on my white horse and save the company, those days are pretty much over, right? So what's happening is we're moving away from like the tactics and strategies and all of that sort of stuff. We're moving to a more internal relational world that's instead of the focusing on the external things that are happening in the company, the internal, the relational, and also the invisible, the nuances at companies. And there's so much about that to talk about, but it really starts with people. So
Mm.
that's the beginning of answering my question. You know, you've got these leaders who, the way I look at it is we're transitioning out from the white horse leader to instead a subtle symphony conductor,
Mm.
somebody who's leading all these parts of the organization, these talented people. And how do you optimize all those different players, these musicians, to create a harmonious sound?
Oh, I'm all about that word harmony. Every system, right? People have their roles to play and they shouldn't be all the same. This is why diversity of thought and diversity of people and how you bring it together creates that harmony versus you can't have all baritones or all bass. That will maybe work for one song.
It's so huge. There's nothing really to add. You just said it.
You also brought up the MBA versus psychology degree. I'm right there with this contact of yours. And it's interesting because I was just having a conversation with someone in a biotech field about her being questioned about the master's degree she was going for
Mm.
because the old school way of thinking from the founders, who are old school, was wait, aren't you getting your MBA?
Hmm.
And she's in HR. That MBA, working in spreadsheets and understanding finance is not where her strength lies, right? It's with the people and helping people feel heard and making sure she's protecting the company, sure, but also helping the human resources be optimized for that organization. So it is interesting that there's this need in what people working directly with humans feel they need, and this disconnect from decision makers and people that are just disconnected from what's going on within the organization a lot of times. You've seen that as well?
It's a transition that is happening slowly and is happening. Uh, there's a great quote about science, and it says, science or medicine, or maybe both of them. It's one of my favorite quotes. It says, "Science moves forward one death at a time."
Mm,
So
ooh,
basically, you have all these people who are holding on to these very old principles that are slowly becoming outdated, and they just haven't kind of caught up yet to what the new program is. I don't know what else to say about that except, you know, if people need to be convinced, a lot of times they're data driven and they need to see companies that focus more on human relations, they have higher employee retention, which we know that they do. They are more productive. I mean, all these things that we're talking about creates happier employees who stay longer, who feel better about their job, who have better family life. I mean, there's just no doubt that the things that we're talking about work.
yeah. And I'm seeing that the speed of innovation and adoption of technology is coming so dictatorial from the top down, and these leaders typically don't even manage their own calendars, right? They're not the ones adopting it, but they're force feeding this. We have to do this fast. And so a lot of these principles that they were investing in it previously, that research, like you just mentioned, shows kind of out the window at the moment because it's this race, right? So we know that the pressure point of speed often contradicts in leaders' minds best practices?
It's hard. I mean, being a leader, especially with the shadow of AI being cast on everything, it's really, really hard.
Mhm.
And acknowledging that frustration is certainly part of it. I'll tell you one thing that I had a conversation with somebody who has been a leader for a very long time, and I was asking her about these new approaches. We called it the woo, right? As a
Mhm.
woo,
Woo woo. Yeah.
mindfulness and yoga and deep listening and all these sort of things. And I said, what's your sense? Because I've studied with the conscious leadership group, and I said, and I've talked to other people about this too. And I said, there's a lot of talk about conscious leadership. How much of it is actually being applied? And even since I started really researching leadership heavily, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, what I've heard is that people are talking about it, but they're not adopting it. And I spoke with somebody just the other day on a scale of 1 to 10. Where do you think these are? Like, is this really being used? She says it used to be at a 1, and she says now it's getting up to a 7, 8, or 9, realizing that this new world of leadership is coming fast and has to be adopted. The train is speeding down the tracks, and you need to jump on.
Mhm. Love it. And I see a lot of tech founders and people with new businesses and new energy really trying to be conscientious about it. And then these legacy organizations that move a lot slower in certain aspects are picking things up, but not as company wide, organization wide, for sure. Yeah, I'm seeing that too. Love that scale. That's great.
Yeah.
So, why don't you talk a little bit more about what your focus is now and where you're going with your systems wide thinking in healthcare organizations?
Sure. Well, one of the aspects that I'm dealing with in healthcare organizations, and something that this is actually a relatively new illumination, is that here you are working in a world of the human body. And if we think about the human body and the cells forming tissues, the tissues forming organs, and how the organs interact with one another, this whole system that is working together in harmony, there's that word again.
Mhm.
And when I realized that approaching healthcare organizations to understand that their organization is also a interactive system, that they have all these different parts that need to work and harmonize together. So that's in particular how I'm talking to healthcare organizations, that your organization is an organic whole, it's a holistic system, and it works just like the human body. It has an immune system, it has energy that needs to be managed. We'll talk about energy in a second. And so figuring out how to optimize that organism is really where you need to go, but really starts at the cellular level. I mean, even now we're going to get kind of woo. Studying a there's a Tibetan lineage holder named Tulku Thondup, and he's talked about, health. He says you can actually visualize all of your cells being of optimal health. And so I know that sounds super woo, but I definitely believe in visualization. I have used it successfully for myself. And so it's, it comes back to systems thinking. And if you're talking about systems, what better system to discuss that everybody has common ground with as the human body?
Mhm. Yeah, so applying systems thinking for change, developing the organization, which happens to be in healthcare, and speaking their language, right? These are healthcare providers, people that understand the science of the body, so taking that and going, "Okay, let's apply all of the things you already know, and
Right.
take a beat and pause and think about your system in that same way."
And that's applied to when we talk about the cells. That means when a clinician comes in, my friend Gail, we'll go back to her for a second. I've gone to appointments with her. She had one cardiologist came in, like the worst, by far, the worst interaction I had ever seen between a clinician and patient was with him and her. She would start to say something and he would finish her sentences for her. And literally that happened during the entire 20 minutes. So that's one of the cells of that entire system. As I say all the time, every interaction that you have in the healthcare world is part of the healing process. The person in the billing office, are they kind? Do they understand that are challenged financially? Can they guide you to the right place? The nurse that comes in and takes your vitals, is she kind or is she curt? My primary one day said, I asked her, I said, "Who is that woman that took all my vitals?" She's like, "Oh, she's just here for the day." Everybody's blood pressure is suddenly way higher because of the interaction with
No.
this medical assistant. So, as I tell people all the time, every interaction that we have, certainly in the healthcare system, is a part of the healing process. Every single one.
Mhm. Yep.
So,
So important. So how do you work with those organizations to enact change? Is there certain methodologies, ways that you like obviously if you're talking to leaders, that's one thing, but how does it trickle down to that person taking the blood pressure?
well, it starts, there's no change that's going to happen in an organization until you get buy-in from the leaders. In fact, that's one of the things that Jim Detmer said at Conscious Leadership Group. He says, if I don't have buy-off from the leaders, there's no way I'm going to walk into an organization and try to affect change. He says, if they're not on board, there's just no way that it's going to move forward. So we've talked about people. Can I talk about the three other areas that I think are really important for leaders these
Yeah.
days?
Mhm.
Thank you. So the other 3 areas that I think are super important, the first one I call big picture thinking. So we're so caught in the weeds most of the time, and we're in tactics and strategy and this sort of thing. We need to step back, and the best attribute that any leader can have is a sense of awareness. What's going on around me? Like, "Oh, we keep having turnover here. What could possibly be happening here?" Being op being open to listening and paying attention and learning from everyone around there. I guarantee you, you can learn as much about what's happening in your hospital system or your community healthcare system as you can talking to the receptionist, or the janitor as you would anybody else, because trust me, they hear everything. They hear about the people grumbling, you know, behind behind the scenes about that doctor who is a total jerk, and nobody wants to say anything because they don't want it to get back to the doctor and lose their job. So Brene Brown talks about this, the vulnerability expert. She talks about really being, she says, I'm always in the C suites, the corporate suites, and the things that she's learned where systems work. How is this like? How is everything playing out here? What are the patterns that are going on, and sensing the nuance? So that's a, a big part of it. Is there are things that we see and things that we don't see. There are things that are happening above the surface and they're happening below the surface. What I'm suggesting is that we get so much better at picking up the things that are happening below the surface. So that's one of them, big picture thinking, really being aware of what's going on in the big picture. The second thing is instead of managing strategies, about managing energy, just like the human body. And when I talk about energy, the next word I use in energy is I talk about invisible forces. Now that's when the eyes start to roll.
Mhm.
You talk to like invisible forces, you talk to somebody in billing and they're like invisible forces here. And let me ask you a question. Do you believe in gravity?
Yes.
You believe in gravity? You do?
I believe
Okay.
there's gravitational pull.
Okay, when have you seen gravity? When do you see it? When do you see this thing? Here's a here's my little lavender thing that
Anytime I fall into the ground,
but you can't
tripped over
physically
myself.
but you can't see it like you can see this bottle though.
Correct.
But you believe in gravity because it's incredibly powerful invisible force.
Mhm.
So you believe in that invisible force, right? Okay, question number 2 for you, Lisa. This one is gonna be maybe a little bit harder. Do you believe in electricity?
I believe that when I turn my light switch and the electricity is plugged into my house, my lights will go on.
You're really glad. Okay, so you believe in gravity and electricity, but you can't see either of those unless the electrical charge on your,
Mhm.
your laundry is clacking, but you can't see these things. So the next question is, it's the same with people in organizations. There are invisible forces that are going on all the time. So learning to, even when you walk into a room, it's like, wow, there's low energy in here. You can pick up that energy. I mean, we know that that's happening. So if you just take that further, like how do you make a meeting? You step into a meeting, and how do you start the meeting by making it more fun? Just like you and I began today, there's a improvisational game called Zip Zap Zop. Zip Zap Zop is, look it up. It's the best way to start any sort of meeting because it kicks up the energy, it connects people, and it brings them into the present. So they have totally forgotten about the reports that are due and all this sort of stuff. And it's just a great way of managing energy. And even if you look at a company like the shoe company Zappos in Las Vegas, they are masters at mastering energy. That other meetings are super fun. I believe this is still the case. It was when I researched them. They allow employees to decorate. You can decorate your area, your work area any way that you want. And one of the biggest things is they give their salespeople absolute latitude to keep the customer happy. So if they decide, you know what, I'm going to give this customer a free pair of shoes. They don't have to ask their supervisors. They know that they have the okay to do whatever is needed to keep their customer happy. And that's a huge benefit. The last one of the four things that I'm going to talk about, the first three were people, big picture thinking, and managing energy, is become the master of your world. Now, that may seem kind of weird based on the other things that I've talked about, but here's what I'm talking about. When we wake up in the morning, sometimes we wake up with this sense of dread, like, oh my God, I've got this meeting and that meeting, and, then I've got to drive, and then, this sort of thing. If I'm going to drive from here back to Bellingham, Washington, I live in North Asheville, North Carolina. If I'm going to drive back to Bellingham, Washington, I need a GPS, or in the old days, you'd literally have maps. I need to know where I'm going. And the biggest problem that most people, leaders included, they don't completely understand that you actually have an incredible amount of control over how your day unfolds, but it starts when you wake up. And, how do you what are the principles that you live by? Lisa, I'm asking you all these tough questions.
Yeah,
When
you do.
when was,
Uh,
how many conversations did you have in January about the word dignity?
Dignity. I don't know if that ever came up.
How about
That word.
respect and honor? We talked How many conversations about respect and honor did you have?
Respect for sure. The word honor, ooh, I don't know if that came up much. Respect in our household, we have 3 family rules.
Okay.
Respect self, respect others, and respect things. And so we
Beautiful.
talk about that a lot with my 10-year-old.
So those are great rules. That's awesome. Now you can watch the movie 300, and when King Leonidas is teaching his son at the beginning, when the Persian soldier comes in and says they're gonna destroy Sparta,
Mm.
he's teaching his son, and he looks at his son, and he says, "Remember today's lesson, respect and honor." Jim Detmer at Conscious Leadership Group said, "We know what our values are. We know what we're committed to based on our results, the results in our life." So you're teaching your 10-year-old to live to live according to respect and honor. How do you start your day? You start your day and you pick up your phone and you doom scroll in it and you see who's
Mhm.
texted you and you check on this latest business thing. It starts with that. We're the sum total of our rituals. And now I'll just mention briefly that starting off the day, there's actually two kind of really interesting different approaches to starting your day because the Flow Research Collective talks about doing something different. But most people will start off with a morning ritual. What are your values? The four things that I do for 3 minutes each morning is, I start off 3 minutes, love, joy, gratitude, and bliss. I say, "I'm gonna live my day with love, joy, gratitude, and bliss," and I do that for 3 minutes, and then I send love out to 3 people. My 2 kids are often 2 of the 3 people, but not this morning. Guess who was included in my 3 people this morning, Lisa Virtue? It might have been you because I was like, "I'm gonna be hanging out with Lisa. I'm gonna send my love to her today. You were one of my 3." And then I move, so this is a big one. This is huge, and it's so fascinating. There's a creative artist who's been the producer of tons and tons and tons of musicians named Rick Rubin, and he was talking about awe yesterday, awe and wonder.
Mm.
So I say, I'm going to live my day with awe and wonder. 3 minutes of that. I'm going to invite in awe and wonder during my day today. And then the last of the four that I do for 3 minutes is I'm going to have a moment of awe that is going to blow my socks off today. Something really special and unique is going to happen to me today. And when I do these things, my day goes so much better. And I'll tell you something that's really fascinating is always when I say I'm going to have one really awe filled moment, it always happens. And Rick Rubin talks about the same thing. He says, if you like, how do you want your company to unfold? What vision do you have for your company? How are you going to travel from point A to B? Well, I want my people to treat one another with kindness and respect. I want us to have dignified meetings. I still want people to be honest with one another. Starting off your day, whatever your morning ritual is, if you are going to create something at that company, the intangibles, like what I just talked about, are equally, if not more important than the tactics, because what happens is it starts to spread to everybody else. Those principles that can then be folded into everything that you can do. It can be part of your vision statement. And I'll mention, like, in 15 seconds, the second way of starting your day, according to the Flow Research Collective, is that the moment you wake up, you're in this incredibly liminal space between sleeping and awake. And they say the very first thing, the first hour of the morning, it can be saved for creative activity. So say you had been working on, I have no problem whatsoever. Say do business the moment that you wake up, because it's often the most creative part of your day because you're not thinking about all the problem and you wake up and like, wow, that initiative or that blog post I was writing, I've been stuck on. And it's like you start that day and you're just like, oh wow, this is like a hot knife through butter. So anyway, the mornings are incredibly helpful, and you want to start creating your day with all of those
Mm.
that approach.
Great
Work.
recommendation. Thank you for sharing. I love everything you said. I want to react to a couple things. One is the research on creativity, which I geek out about. I love it. Talks about sleep and how important that is, right? For the right side and left side of the brain to work together, the subconscious to put the puzzle pieces together. That makes so much sense. I've never thought of it that way. What a great way to think about it. Why I
Yeah.
typically feel very energized in the morning too, right? Because you're so much more clear, you don't have a lot of baggage you're adding to that puzzle that your brain's trying to work out. So love that. The awe, I've also been in awe of some of the research coming out about that and how taking those moments to really appreciate awe in the world, especially the natural world. I took my daughter to her first sound bath this past weekend, and it was
Oh,
yeah,
awesome.
the second full moon of the year, which was really interesting, starting off February. And she had a lot of fun. It was really fun watching her kind of experience and be in awe of, like, all these adults around her just laying and enjoying this sound bath. And afterwards, because we had clear skies that night, we were able to see the full moon rising through some small clouds, and just that moment of awe too, and pointing that out to her and watching her experience it, but also myself have just that appreciation of the natural wonders around us. It really does help change our perspective, doesn't it?
Are you the cool mom? Ask your
That
daughter. Ask your daughter one day, say, "Sweetie, are
I'll
you the
ask her
cool
someday.
am I the cool mom among your friends? Am I the cool mom?"
Well,
See
I'm
what she
sure
says.
I appreciate that. I'm sure there's a lot of argument to be made both ways.
If you took her to a sound bath, I think, went right to the top of the list.
Yeah, she's a pretty special girl. It's really easy to make her life full of awe.
Hey, the fruit doesn't fall far from the tree.
Very sweet, Matt. Well, as we wrap up our conversation, which I hate to do, but I always am the one that has to do that. What other shares would you like to provide our audience? Anything that you want to mention that we haven't talked about?
Yeah, well, one of the questions that you asked me as we were heading to this is I'm a leader and I'm struggling, and what's the like all the stuff that you're telling me, it's too much. I can't deal with it. It's like you're kind of weird. It's all this stuff. It's like, what's one thing that I could do this week to make things different? And I throw out a little challenge. Spend 1 week, and every minute of your week is focused on the people that you work with. There's only one thing that you need to manage. Instead of worrying, just spend 1 week, Instead of focusing on tactics and micromanaging and all this sort of stuff, just focus on the people. You walk in front of into somebody and you're just like, "Hey, I heard your son was sick. Is everything better at home?" Or, you know, what's just a compliment about their work. Wow, hey, I read that, Joe told me I haven't read the entire report, but what I saw was really great. Joe said you did a great job on that initiative. And then or just even going to somebody who, like, you hardly ever talk to and just saying a simple hello. Think about the intangibles, about the space between the notes. And, oh, there's 2. So here's part 2. Here's part 2 of the 1-week challenge. Now, this one, I'm sure I would be so interested to hear how people react to this. Start learning partner dancing. Salsa, take a West Coast or East Coast swing class, ballroom dance, the partner dancing of your choice. There is no activity that will teach you more about how to interact with other people in partner dancing. Because one of the things that you will find, especially when you're taking a lesson and you like have a new partner every few minutes, is that everybody's different. Everybody responds differently. You are so aligned with one person. It just feels so good. The next person, it's like, I feel like I'm dancing with concrete here or something like that. Even if you are terrible at dancing, you have 2 left feet, even more reason to
Mm,
do that.
nothing more of a connection, right? When you're stuck with someone.
It can be terrible, but that can be just as educational as but that's the life lesson.
Yeah, I took ballroom dancing in college and also did a lot of swing dancing back then with my friend group, and I love it. So much fun. I know it's not for everyone, but I do agree with you, the lessons you can learn and even some of the little quotes that you get from the teachers too, right? About if you think of it as the lens of that human connection, if you're trying to figure out how can I make that more organic in my day-to-day and life, I totally hear you. Like in those situations, you can take a lot and apply it into life later for
Huge learning,
Mhm.
huge learning lesson.
Yeah. Ooh, I love it. Awesome. All right, Matt, how can people get a hold of you?
My email address is mattperryhealth at M-A-T-T, Perry, P-E-R-R-Y, the word health, at Gmail, and they are free to give me a call. 916-320-0613.
But now everyone has your phone number.
I'm fine with that.
That's beautiful. I hope people take advantage and give you a call and have a conversation. You have so much wealth of insights and experience and all these stories that you've heard from others. Like it really shines and shows the themes you're coming together with your work. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you. Can I make a quick offering for anybody that wants to
Please.
reach out to me? One of my signature offering for leaders is called Symphony, and it's exactly what I was talking about at the very beginning. So I wanted to give a free hour to people that are interested in learning more about this and sharing how they can become a symphony conductor for their organization. Also, what do they need to do as the conductor and how do they react? How do they harmonize the disparate parts of their orchestra? How do you become a tuning fork, right? How do you find out what's going on out there, what's really happening? And the last thing I'll say, this is David Brooks from his highly recommended book called How to Know a Person: The Art of Seeing Others Deeply and Being Deeply Seen. How do you become an illuminator? It says there's 2 kind of people. There's illuminators and diminishers. Be an illuminator.
I love that. Elevate others. Yes, absolutely. So much, Matt. Really
Thank
appreciate your
you.
time.
Thank you, Lisa. You're the most virtuous person I have met in my life. I just wanted to let you know. It was a pleasure
It's
talking to
a
you.
pleasure for me as well.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining today's conversation. Before you go, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and to leave us a 5-star review in support. If you would like to take this conversation further and continue strengthening your leadership heartset, check out heartsetstudio.com and subscribe to our Heartwire newsletter. Heartset Studio is also available to connect on your leadership development goals and initiatives for you and the other leaders in your organization. Contact us today through the website. And most importantly, thank you so much for all you do for the other humans in your life. We know that you show up with heart time and again, and it is most appreciated.